Okay, so in today's video, we're going to have a look at part 5 of the Reading and Use of English section of the Proficiency exam, C2, the Cambridge exam. What do we get in part 5? Well, it's a multiple choice exercise, a long text followed by some multiple choice questions, each with 4 options, A, B, C, or D. So there are 6 questions in this part, and what kind of things are they going to be testing here? Well, as we said, it's a long text, so identifying detail, opinion, attitude, tone, purpose, main idea, implication, and how a text is organized. So this is a really difficult part of the exam, like really difficult because this isn't just your level of English, this is your understanding of a really complicated text, like your comprehension. That's what they're checking here, basically. How well do you understand the message of a text? Just so you get a quick idea, this is what it looks like, more or less. Long text on the left and 6 questions there on the right. So what I'm going to do is read the text as quickly as possible, and then I'm going to go through the questions and look at the possible options and try to explain why one of the 4 options is better than the other 3. If you have any doubts as to vocabulary, as to the answer of any of the questions, just leave a comment on the video, obviously, and I'll try to answer the avalanche of comments that I'm expecting. Okay, so let's get started. Lucy gets a new job on a newspaper. It was a precarious period for her where her own fortunes were concerned. She had to rely on freelance work for 6 months after the Quality Weekly magazine folded. The regular salary check had always seemed derisively small, but now it was like lost riches. Doggedly, she wrote letters and telephoned and peppered editors with unsolicited articles and suggestions. Sometimes she struck lucky and got a commission. She wrote a profile of a woman politician who appreciated her fair-minded approach and tipped her off about a local government row in a complacent cathedral town. Lucy went there, investigated, talked to people, and wrote a piece exposing a rich cauldron of corruption, which was snapped up by a national daily newspaper. This in turn led to a commission to investigate the controversial sighting of a theme park in the north of England. Her article was noticed by the features editor in search of something sharp and bracing on the heritage industry in general. She was getting a name for abrasive comment, for spotting an issue and homing in upon it. Anxiously, she scoured the press for hints of impending issues. In this trade, she saw you needed not so much to be abreast of things as ahead of them, lying in wait for circumstance, ready to pounce. But an article sold every week or 2 did not pay the bills. She began to contemplate, bleakly, a return to the treadmill of proofreading and copy editing. And then, one day, she walked into the offices of the National Daily, which had taken her cauldron of corruption piece, and whose features editor had since looked kindly upon her. Having handed over a speculative piece on the latest educational theories she'd written, she fell into conversation with an acquaintance and learned that one of the paper's regular columnists had fallen foul of the editor and departed in a cloud of dust. The column, traditionally addressed to matters of the moment and written so as to provoke attention and controversy, was untethered, so to speak. Lucy made the necessary phone call before her nerve went. She was asked to submit a piece as a trial run, which they published. "Great," they said. "We'll let you know," they said. "Soon," they assured her. "Really very soon." She chewed her nails for a fortnight. A seasoned hack was given a trial run after her. She read his contribution, which she saw with absolute clarity was succinct, incisive, and original, or just possibly anodyne, banal, and plodding. And then the phone call came. She'd have a weekly column with her own byline and her photograph, postage stamp size, next to it. There'd be a salary check and perhaps fame and success to follow that. Thinking more pragmatically, she realized that the job presented her with not only a wonderful opportunity, but also the inevitable pressure of keeping up with the twists and turns of events to which she must supply a perceptive commentary. "A start," she said to her mother, Maureen, and Bruce, her stepfather. "It's a start anyway. But they could fire me at any moment." "Just let them try," said Maureen belligerently. "I think you're better with your hair a bit shorter, or maybe that's not a very flattering picture. I think you're very clever. You did some lovely essays at school. I wonder if I've still got any of them somewhere." Later, when she was alone, Lucy thought that her appointment had probably been a piece of good fortune. She refused to allow the word luck. She was young yet, and this was something of a plum. She must have got the job on her merits, she told herself, along with whatever assistance there may have been from the inadequacies of others considered for the appointment, or the failure of further rivals to apply. What she was never to know was that in fact the editor had been on the verge of offering the column to the seasoned hack, had been about to pick up the phone when the colleague he most disliked had walked into his office and spoken with satisfaction of the prospect of closer association with this old crony of his. The editor listened with some indignation, first at the assumption that this would be his decision, and then at the notion of these two ganging up under his nose. As soon as the colleague was out of the room, he reached for the phone and rang Lucy. And so it began, that time during which she was so feverishly hitched to the affairs of public life that in retrospect it was to seem as though she hurtled from day to day with the onward rush of the news, denied any of the lethargy of individual existence. Hello, 3 people who are still watching, 7.5 minutes in. We're going to have a look at the questions now. 6 comprehension questions, multiple choice. Let's see how you do. So, number 1, after losing her job, how did Lucy feel about the salary she used to earn? A, she had been foolish to give it up. B, it had given her a sense of security. C, she should have appreciated it more. Or D, it represented a fair return for her work. So, first of all, answer A, she had been foolish to give it up. Well, we know that's not right. I mean, we can see even in the question, after losing her job, well, if you lose your job, you don't give it up. Also in the text, it says that the magazine folded. The magazine she was working for closed. So A is wrong. What about B? It had given her a sense of security. Well, let's see what she thinks about the salary she was getting. The regular salary check had always seemed derisively small. Well, she's saying that it's ridiculously small. It wasn't enough. So I don't think it's suggested in any way that she thought it made her feel secure. So B is wrong as well. Let's have a look at C. She should have appreciated it more. Well, yeah. I mean, she said that it had always seemed derisively small, but it was now like lost riches that now she would appreciate. She would have appreciated having that monthly check. So C is the correct answer. D, it represented a fair return for her work, that she felt that it was the right amount of money for the amount of work or the quality of work that she was doing. Well, no, because she said it was derisively small. So, number 32, Lucy thinks the secret of success as a freelance journalist is to A, keep yourself informed about current affairs, B, adopt a controversial style of writing, C, identify future newsworthy situations, or D, make as many contacts as possible. So the answer to this question comes in the final 2 sentences at the end of the first paragraph. She was getting a name for abrasive comments, for spotting an issue and homing in upon it, Anxiously, she scoured the press for hints of impending issues. In this trade, she saw you needed not so much to be abreast of things as ahead of them, lying in wait for circumstance ready to pounce. So, what is the secret to success as a freelance journalist, according to Lucy? Well, A, keep yourself informed about current affairs. Well, we can see that she did keep herself informed about current affairs. She scoured the press for hints of impending issues. No? Does she say that's the secret for success, the secret of success as a freelance journalist? Well, I don't see any evidence that she says that that is the secret to success. It's just what she did. B, adopt a controversial style of writing. Well, she did have a controversial writing style. She was getting a name for abrasive comment, for spotting an issue and homing in upon it, like an animal stalking its prey. C, though, to identify future newsworthy situations. Well, the key here is in the final sentence. In this trade, she saw, so in her opinion, you needed not so much to be abreast of things, which basically means to be up to date. She doesn't think that's necessarily the most important thing, rather than to be ahead of them, lying in wait for circumstance, ready to pounce, so anticipating what is going to happen. So I think C is the correct answer, to identify future newsworthy situations, to realize what is going to become a big news story. Again, with D, yeah, she does make a lot of contacts. There's no doubt about that. We see right at the beginning of the paragraph how she peppered and telephoned editors with unsolicited articles, etc. But the key to this answer is really that final sentence. In this trade, she saw you needed... So this is what she thought that in this trade was the most important thing. Yeah, it's definitely C, that you have to be ahead of the news. You have to know what is going to happen, what is going to become a big story. Okay, so number 33. What made Lucy decide to apply for a job on the National Daily? A, she had a friend who worked there. B, she had impressed the features editor. C, she had gained a reputation for effective reporting. Or D, she had discovered some information about a vacancy. So again here you have to be very careful. Look at the question. What made Lucy decide to apply for a job on the National Daily? Because initially she went into the office to hand over a speculative piece on the latest educational theories. And why did she go in there to hand in this latest article? Well, it was because in the National Daily, they had taken her Cauldron of Corruption piece, the article that we spoke about in the first paragraph. They had taken it, and the features editor had since looked kindly upon her, which means the features editor thought maybe she was a good journalist or had a soft spot for her. No? So we look at options A and B. She had a friend who worked there. Well, she had an acquaintance who we think worked there. I mean, she had just been in the office. She had written this education piece and handed it over to the features editor. And then she fell into conversation with an acquaintance. We assume an acquaintance who worked in the National Daily, but we're not even sure. Also, an acquaintance isn't exactly a friend. It's just somebody that you know. And also, it doesn't say that that is the reason she applied for a job at the National Daily. Nor is it the reason that she applied for the job that she had impressed the features editor. It doesn't even say she impressed the features editor, rather that he kind of liked her. No, he had a soft spot for her. He looked kindly upon her. He was trying to help her. I don't think he was particularly impressed by her. What about option C? She had gained a reputation for effective reporting. Well, they refer to the article she had just handed in to the features editor as speculative, so that it wasn't particularly good necessarily. We saw that in the previous paragraph, they did talk about that she had an abrasive style. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that she was an effective reporter. No, I think the answer is D. She had discovered some information about a vacancy, and it comes in this sentence where she talks about the conversation she had with an acquaintance. she learned that one of the paper's regular columnists had fallen foul of the editor and departed in a cloud of dust. So that is what pushed Lucy to apply for the job. She found out that one of the journalists had left the newspaper, and Lucy made the necessary call before her nerve went, before she lost her nerve. Okay, so let's take a look at the next 3 questions. Here they are. Number 34. It is suggested that Lucy's mother, Maureen, A, is forgetful and absent-minded. B, understands little about Lucy's job. C, has good critical judgment about writing. D, expects Lucy will have trouble with the editor. Okay, so in this question, option A, is it suggested that Maureen, Lucy's mother, is absent-minded or forgetful? Absent-minded means that you forget to do things a lot, so it's very similar to forgetful, no? Sort of a bit disorganized, whatever. Maybe from the general description of the way she's talking to Lucy, but I don't think there's any evidence that she forgets anything, really. In fact, the only mention of memory is her talking about the lovely essays Lucy wrote at school. So no, it's not A. Option B, understands little about Lucy's job. Yeah, I don't think she understands much about Lucy's job. Lucy's trying to explain, it's a start, but they could fire me at any moment. And she just responds, Maureen responds by saying, ooh, just let them try, as though that's inconceivable. It couldn't happen. She couldn't be fired. So Lucy obviously understands the precarious nature of her job, whereas Maureen, her mother, doesn't. And she quickly changes topic and moves on to, I think you're better with your hair a bit shorter, or maybe that's not a very flattering picture. You're very clever. You did some lovely essays at school. Yeah, I don't think she really understands much about Lucy's job. Has good critical judgment about writing. Well, again, I don't think she really understands the difference between the serious, hard critical journalism that Lucy's involved with now and the lovely essays that Lucy did at school. So no, she probably isn't the best critical judge of writing. No, so I don't think it's C. And D, expects Lucy will have trouble with the editor. Well, she certainly doesn't say that, and when Lucy suggests that she could be fired at any moment, Maureen says, just let them try. They wouldn't dare. It's impossible. They're not going to fire you. You're too clever. Yeah, she clearly understands very little about Lucy's job. The answer is B. So, number 35, on reflection, how did Lucy account for the fact that she got the job? A, she hoped it was because she deserved it. B, she was unable to understand how it happened. C, she thought her age had given her an advantage. Or D, she knew she was better than the many applicants. Okay, so let's have a look at the first option. She hoped it was because she deserved it. I think this is probably the best answer, but it's quite difficult to see why. When she was alone, Lucy thought about her appointment. She thought her appointment had probably been a piece of good fortune. So her initial thought was that it had probably been luck. But she refused to allow the word luck. She was young yet, and this was something of a plum. This was a great opportunity. She must have got the job on her merits, she told herself. So her merits must have been involved. No, she's trying to convince herself that her merits are what got her the job. Along with, yes, whatever assistance there may have been from the inadequacies of the others considered for the appointment or the failure of further rivals to apply. So there is a possibility. She allows in her mind a possibility for the fact that other candidates may have been inadequate. They may not have been good enough for the job, or that better people may not have applied. But I think the answer is A. Let's have a look at the other options. B, she was unable to understand how it happened. Well, she's clearly not unable to understand. I mean, she's going through a whole list of reasons why she thinks she was chosen for the job. So I don't think it's B. She thought her age had given her an advantage. No, this is a trick. She was young yet. I think what she's saying there is that being young, and this being something of a plum, that she got the job on merit, that because she was young and she got the job, that hadn't given her an advantage, rather that she must be really good to have got the job at her age. So, in fact, at least what she's trying to convince herself of is that her age was a disadvantage. And as for D, she knew she was better than the many applicants. I don't think she says that she knew that she was better than the many applicants. In fact, she thinks the inadequacies of other applicants may have played a role in her getting the job, though I don't think she's convinced of that. Also, this idea that there were many other applicants, she talks about one of the possible reasons for her getting the job was the failure of further rivals to apply, that there weren't many other applicants. In fact, we believe there was only one other applicant, or at least the text only refers to one other, the seasoned hack. So yeah, the answer is A. She clearly hoped that it was because she deserved it, that she was young and therefore she was at a disadvantage, and she still got the job anyway. She's trying to convince herself that she got the job on merit, that she deserved it. Okay, so the final question, number 36. The impression given of the editor is that he is A, anxious to please his colleagues, B, unable to make up his mind, C, prone to act on impulse, or D, quick to take offence. So, is the editor A, anxious to please his colleagues? Well, the only mention of how he behaves with his colleague is how, when the colleague he most disliked had walked into his office, and that was what made him change his decision about who he was going to hire. So his colleague was very happy that he was going to contract this seasoned hack who was an old crony, an old friend of his. So he was angry about that and changed his mind and decided to get in touch with Lucy. So I don't think he was anxious to please his colleagues, or at least not that colleague. What about B, that he is unable to make up his mind? Well, there is a suggestion that he changes his mind quite quickly, because his colleague talking about his old crony makes him change his mind about who he's going to hire. He says how he listened with some indignation, first at the assumption that this would be his decision, and then that the notion that these two ganging up under his nose. As soon as the colleague was out of the room, he reached for the phone and rang Lucy. Well, he certainly can make up his mind, and I think that leads us to the answer C, that he is prone to act on impulse. He was very impulsive there. A colleague he didn't like spoke about how he was satisfied, how he was happy that his old friend was coming to work at the company, and that was enough to make him impulsively ring Lucy and hire her instead of this old hack. What about D, quick to take offence? Maybe. I mean, we don't know how quickly he takes offence in general. We know that this person, he doesn't like this colleague of his for whatever reason, and that he seemed to take offence while listening to him assume that he would make one decision or another. But we don't know if he's somebody who takes offence quickly. That's certainly not the impression we get of the editor, I don't think. No, it's clearly see that he's prone to act on impulse. He's an impulsive person. So there we have all of the answers. If you made it this far into the video, oh no, give yourself a pat on the back. Yep.